Hi, and welcome to this new ReachX series. My name is Mehdi. I'm with ReachX, and we're welcoming today Meryem Belqziz, who is the CEO of Génération France and ex-general manager at Uber. Meryem, it's a pleasure to have you today among us.
Thank you, Mehdi. It's a great pleasure for me to be here as well.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. And so today we are going to discuss about growth. For people who don't know ReachX, who are also watching us, ReachX is a digital platform that connects advisors with startups and scale ups, and also investors and corporates, highly skilled advisors in their field. So today, obviously, um, a lot of stuff have been said, about growth, about driving a company to the next stage in terms of like going and and conquering almost like new markets and new countries. But before deep diving into growth, I want you, Miriam, to introduce yourself and tell us who you are in few words, and what you're currently doing and what you have been doing at Uber.
Yeah, sure. So, as you said, I was before a general manager for Uber. I launched and managed Uber in Morocco for 3 years. And then I was in charge of the customer experience for Uber Eats for Western Europe. And actually, at my time at Uber, besides growth, which was one of the, I would say, the one of the key DNA factors at Uber, one of the two things that really impacted me. One was how do we make sure that we help people to grow inside their jobs? So I got really interested into coaching, and now I'm also a certified coach. So for startups and scale ups,
Oh, well.
helping them with their strategy and how to link HR performance with the global KPIs. And the second topic was social impact, because especially for Uber in Morocco, there was a very strong element of social impact for ex-taxi drivers who wanted to become autonomous and have their own businesses. So I'm also right now managing a NGO called Generation Friends. And my next move will be to be totally independent as a coach and continue help businesses to scale, while also helping social impact NGOs and enterprises to scale as well.
Common challenges, Mariam, that you get as a coach as well, because you've been there, you've been obviously speaking to a lot of scale ups, you've been doing it yourself, scaling a company. What are the kind of common traits and the usual challenges that people would come with, to you and say, "Well, Mariam, please help us reach X, etc." Are they usually knowledge problems? Are they usually organizational, sorry, problems? Are they usually both? What do you see out there that are kind of common threads when scale up come to you and need help with growth?
Yeah. I think the first question is why? Why do we want to grow? And for many people, this seems quite an obvious question with an obvious response, like, yes, because it's great to grow. But it's not that easy. And why it's very important to start with the why, it's because if you're totally aligned on the why with your employees, with your clients, with your suppliers, with your general ecosystem, you then lead your growth with purpose. And that's much stronger to lead with purpose than just to grow for the sake of growing. So once you reply to this first question of the why and what is that you want to bring to the world with more impact or with maybe more efficiency, etc., then on the how, I would say that it really depends on the company's culture. Some companies are very test and learn agile cultures, and in that case, you can definitely um, walk and adjust as you grow. So you first start by scaling your team, then organizing their processes and their jobs and their responsibilities, and then going into something more process in terms of organization, having something more structured, or depending again on your culture and also the expectations of your stakeholders, you start with the vision of the organization, and then you hire the right people, you set up the right processes, or you set up the process people, etc. So on these three dimensions, there's no right or wrong response. It really depends on the culture and also your own, I would say, appetence with uncertainty, because some people like really to plan a lot, and for these it's great to start with a setup organization on paper, and some people prefer to adjust as they grow. And there is also another dimension which is I think which is important, is to really communicate along the way. um, every startup CEO or scale up CEO has a clear vision in general in their minds, but they tend to think that everyone is knowledgeable about this vision and understand fully this vision, and they are generally very surprised when they ask their employees or their board or their clients or the suppliers to tell them what's the vision. So it's also a great exercise as you grow to be very attuned with the comms that you um, give to your stakeholders.
One of the elements as well, that I keep having, and I keep having these chats with a lot of friends and a lot of entrepreneurs that I meet, is new additions into the team. And certainly you're having your I think your an opinion on that and some thoughts on that. But from your experience on both Uber, both what you're doing right now, Generation France, and all your previous experiences, I'm trying to kind of like trying to almost to kind of give tips to people who are hiring through the ReachX platform, because they usually take advisors who are independent and then pair them with companies to help them, on some specific projects. A new addition never comes without struggle and without challenges. From your experience, what were the winning solutions in a way of having new additions, into a team,
Mm,
especially from a cultural match? We can think as well from an expectations match, that kind of like all the challenges that, the acceptance, the expertise. Um, what are your thoughts on that? And where do you have kind of any winning strategies when it comes to having new additions within your team?
yeah. That's a great question. Actually, for me, there is a framework that I go with every time, which is before considering hiring, um, do we need to have it, to have this process or this competency internalized? Can it be outsourced? Can it be automized? And if the response is no, actually, it's a core competency that I really need to have internally, then for sure you go with hiring. Or
Absolutely.
if your I would say your finances or your business model is not totally stable, then you can definitely go with some freelancers at the beginning, have them coach your junior team members. So that's also a great combination for some startups, that you hire junior people and then you have much more experienced people mentor them for a day, for example. This could be a great way also of internalizing the competencies you need. Um, but you always, along the way, really need to ask yourself this question: automatize, uh, outsource, or internalize?
Yeah, and in terms of the outsourcing stuff, do you have any kind of any tips about how do you mitigate as well the risk of having two cultures that are completely different, like almost clashing, because you can come from two companies within the same industry and yet have two very different, sometimes difficult as well cultures, with two very different cultures. How do you take someone from an interim position and bring him into a company and try to kind of to mitigate that risk in terms of like the culture?
Hmm. Hmm. Um, I think when it comes to culture, people believe there is sometimes something that is either fixed, and that's something that is not going to change, and also that I would say that the startup funder is the one setting up the culture. But the reality is, actually, culture is moving. Culture is like waves, and it's every single person that comes to your that's that is an addition to your team, come with their own cultural factors. Now, what is super, I think, super interesting, and for me, it's always a great experience, is how do you shape the culture as you go, but also um, not being totally focused on controlling the culture, because that's the best way actually of having a toxic culture, and at the end, not controlling anything. So by accepting, I would say, different contribution to the culture, by reinforcing, and this also is in link with the first, I think one of the first points I raised on the comms, the internal comms, external comms, etc. By voicing what is your vision, you have to shape this culture, but you also need to be open to your team contribution, to your stakeholder contribution, because at the end, the culture is something very versatile, and the more you it's open, the more is, I would say, inclusive and beneficial to everyone.
And it's a really good point, because this is something that a lot of as well entrepreneurs kind of find challenging, which is building up a team. How do you keep, according to you, a culture that is consistent with time? You just mentioned right now that a culture is something that is moving, that is not necessarily shaped by only the
Mm,
founder.
mm.
How do you maintain that culture along the way? Because when you're two people, when you're 10, when you're 200, it's not the same discussion. How do you keep that kind of alignment?
Yeah, yeah. For me, there is a very, I would say, there is a cursor that you're gonna adjust according to your own objectives, according to the company objectives, and according to the market you're in, the employees you want to have, your, I would say, purchasing power and
Yeah,
negotiation power
yeah.
towards your employees and your suppliers. So, to take a very concrete example, if you're desperate to get 100 devs, because your business needs, sorry, developers, and but you have a very strong idea of what the culture should be in this company, and you want all these 100 people to think exactly like you, it's not going to work. Instead, if you think, okay, what's my key point, what's my key priority, what's my key objective, do I find people that are aligned with this objective, and then the culture, we shape it together, but we either at the very beginning, of course, I want people to comply with my own objective, but again, at the end, the the company, as the company grows, it's less your baby. It's really, for me, I think the best analogy is growing children. I have a son, he's 11 now. When he was a baby, I could shape his whole experience
Yeah, yeah.
and tell him exactly what to do. As he's growing up, I cannot control this anymore. So our culture, as a group of two people, is really about the way we go along with each other. We communicate all the time together, and we negotiate on how our experience together um, is the most beneficial for everyone. It's like, again, in a couple, in a family, it's exactly the same dynamic. Uh, the more you want to control, the less you can, and at the end, the more you're at risk of breaking your company.
Yeah, and it's a really really important point what you just mentioned right now, which is the kind of like how much do you try to control and how much do you try to kind of let go, in a way for
Mm,
entrepreneurs it can sometimes be very hard. It's a super interesting chat, but I'm also conscious of the time, Miriam. So I'm probably going to ask you one last question. And this question is about growth and it's about fundraising. Obviously, as we see right now through the different news, and there's no day that that passes where we don't see a French startup raising, or even sometimes almost like we had like few unicorns in a matter of a few months in France. What is your take on growth? Can you achieve a reasonable growth without fundraising? Because a lot of
Mm.
people are these days assuming that fundraising is almost like a necessary element to kind of like go and scale your company. Do you think that we can achieve growth that is reasonable without fundraising necessarily, and keeping really the control of your company?
Yeah, that's a great point, and I think there are great examples of these people who really could scale their businesses without fundraising. I think one of the I would say beliefs today is that it's now or never, and we need to go fast, fast, fast because otherwise someone else gonna come. And I think for me there might be a bias into this because people believe that it's the key value of your business is the idea, the initial idea that you're trying to get to into shape and then to scale, etc., etc. But in reality, the key is execution. So if you have a great execution, a seamless experience for your customers, etc., etc., over time you have organic growth, and you don't need, sorry, to go and to fund like crazy, because you can definitely fund your business with your own benefits. But again, this is really, I think it's a question of mindset. It's a question of uh, vision of life. But I don't have and I'm sorry about, because I just read an article about this recently, and I don't remember the name of the two companies that were cited, but they were here for the last 10 years, and they were growing at a steady rate without any fundraising. But it was a very strong decision from their founder, and they decided to go with, again, giving a delightful experience to their customers, and that delightful experience was the best protection, or I would say barrier to entry to newcomers.
Yeah. Well, a big thank you, Mary. Super, super insightful, and really a pleasure to have you again among us. And we wish you really the best of luck for your next endeavors. You mentioned earlier during the
Thank
call
you.
that you are taking in full time soon as a coach. So it's going to be, I'm sure, a wonderful journey. And it was really, really a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Thank you very much, Mehdi. And hi to the whole ReachX team.
Thank you very much, Ma'am.